I'm Marty Stouffer. Olympic National Park in Washington State is divided into a mountain portion and a coastal portion. From the beach, the glaciers on Mount Olympus are only 30 miles away. That short distance spans more life zones than any other area in North America. It contains a remarkable variety of wildlife and our only temperate rainforest. This is the wettest place in the continental United States. We'll explore this rainforest, and then we'll climb into the rugged peaks, whose height controls this dramatic weather, as we begin an Olympic odyssey. When nature crafted the Olympic Peninsula, it fashioned one of the most diverse, dramatic, and unique landscapes in North America. Summits over 7,000 feet high are home to families of Rocky Mountain goats. Olympic marmots are native only to the peninsula, and regal Olympic elk are found here and nowhere else. Beautiful black-tailed deer roam the old-growth forest. Along the wilderness coast, crabs scour the rocks for food. Some of the heaviest surf on the continent bombards the shore, eroding the coastal headlands and slowly isolating them from the land. Within this turbulent world of rocks and water is a wondrous variety of marine life, like the sea star, more commonly known as a starfish. Iridescent green sea anemones thrive in the coastal tide pools. The soft, shell-less hermit crab carries around a borrowed snail shell as it searches for food. 1 square foot of rich tide pool habitat, like that along the wild Olympic coastline, can support 4,000 individual animals. Offshore waters teem with life as well. Whales, sea lions, and seals favor the Olympic Peninsula. Beyond the thunderous crashing of waves, toward the interior of Olympic National Park, lies another world, a quiet forest of soaring trees and abundant mosses and ferns. Sound is absorbed by a canopy of maples and conifers covered by moisture-loving plants. Hikers in this cathedral-like setting are likely to see species of plants and animals native only to the Olympic Peninsula. In the last ice age, glaciers isolated the region and organisms either adapted, like the Olympic chipmunk, or migrated, like many of the birds and the Sitka black-tailed deer. Some animals died out. Perhaps this is why grizzly bears, mountain sheep, wolverines, and others are absent from the Olympics. One species that migrated and returned is the Olympic elk, a subspecies of the Roosevelt elk. Many cow elk give birth in the dense cover of the rainforest. Newborns are hidden everywhere, camouflaged in soft blankets of green. Elk calves are usually born in late May and early June. For the first few weeks of their lives, they are totally reliant on their mothers and the dense cover of the forest. Spring finds baby animals like this blue grouse chick scattered throughout the woods. Even the tiniest of feathered creatures take advantage of this peaceful kingdom of ancient giants. A rufous hummingbird nest blends into the moss-draped limbs. The rainforest of Olympic National Park is sustained by a mind-boggling abundance of moisture. 12 feet of rain per year. Ponds and streams are constantly replenished by both rainfall and snow runoff. They provide freshwater havens for animals like these hooded mergansers. During spring courtship, the male merganser erects his fan-shaped crest and utters a guttural, frog-like croak that can be heard a half-mile away. Nearby, a common snipe uses its long, straight bill to probe for worms and insects. Solitary and secretive, the snipe is rarely seen unless flushed. Other woodland inhabitants are less active in their pursuit of prey. The western toad is not so much looking for a meal as it is waiting for one. Because the west side of the Olympic Mountains are unusually moist, the normally nocturnal banana slug ventures forth in the daytime, breathing through a spherical hole in its side. Oddly enough, its bright yellow color is a form of protection. Blending in with decaying yellow leaves on the forest floor, the slug is often overlooked by predators. But this western garter snake is not to be fooled. When young and small, the slug is a favorite food of snakes. If this young slug had been allowed to grow to its full size, chances are it would have become too large and too distasteful for the snake. In adulthood, the banana slug may grow to nearly 1 foot and exude so much slimy mucus that it is repulsive to even the hungriest predator. So famous are the Olympic slugs that slug souvenirs, including slug cookbooks, are available at local stores. Recipes include such unappetizing entrees as slug stew and slug casserole. Slugs are simply snails without shells, a distinct disadvantage for the slug in this particular instance. One of the most elusive of forest dwellers is the Aplodontia, commonly referred to as the mountain beaver. It does live in mountain forests, and it is an excellent swimmer, but that's where the similarity with the beaver ends. The much smaller mountain beaver usually forages at night to avoid predators like this watchful red-tailed hawk. But occasionally, it is seen during the day. Mysterious and reclusive, large numbers of mountain beaver may occupy an area, yet be totally unseen by humans. The mountain beaver has a varied diet of conifers, grasses, shrubs, and vines, but it prefers ferns. The mountain beaver is found only in the Pacific Northwest, where it has ready access to large amounts of highly succulent vegetation. The moisture contained in the plants is absolutely necessary for its well-being. The foot-long herbivore has a primitive kidney structure that makes it inefficient at conserving water within its own body. The mountain beaver is not gregarious. On the contrary, an unfamiliar face in its network of tunnels is definitely unwelcome. Whichever one gives ground could risk exposure to the waiting hawk. Movement in the stream catches the eye of the still hungry redtail. It glides down to investigate. The hawk apparently realizes it is no match for a sociable river otter. One of the most joyful of creatures, the river otter is an aquatic acrobat, effortlessly slicing through the cool, clear waters of the Olympic Peninsula. For the foiled redtail, a drink of water will have to do for now. Olympic National Park has a sizable black bear population. Clumsy looking on land, the black bear is actually a graceful swimmer. Throughout North America, black bears are found in a variety of color phases, from white to brown to black. Olympic black bears are the exception. They are always black. In the lengthening days of early summer, a short dip in a cool alpine lake can be a refreshing change of pace. New life is awakening across the alpine landscape. Olympic elk move to higher elevations in summer, sharing the mountain meadows with Sitka black-tailed deer. The complex Olympic ecosystem is perfect for these small members of the mule deer family. They require both the winter shelter of the old-growth forest and the summer grazing of the open, high country meadows. One of the few species of Olympic mammals to survive the era of glacial isolation is the Olympic chipmunk. It evolved into one of the largest of the western chipmunks and the darkest in color. Another Ice Age survivor is the Olympic marmot, found only in the mountains of the Olympic Peninsula. The highly social marmots congregate in family units that might include adults, yearling offspring, and a litter of newborns. Always alert to danger, marmots are quick to dash for cover when a sentry sounds its shrill alarm. The most famous of the 60 glaciers found in Olympic National Park is the Blue Glacier, high on the slopes of Mount Olympus. The precipitous cliffs and wind-swept ridges are currently home for the mountain goat, a 20th century phenomenon in the park. A dozen were introduced in the 1920s, and now hundreds roam the high country. Out of the summer glacier fields, small rivulets constantly flow downward. They merge to form rushing streams. Tumbling waters cut through 4 life zones on their relentless journey to the sea. Ocean water rises again and is transformed into moisture-rich clouds that will replenish the peninsula and complete the cycle of life in the Olympics. Throughout the summer, bull elk grow new sets of antlers. By fall, mature males boast racks that weigh 30 pounds or more. The protective layer of velvet which covers their new growth, is rubbed off to expose the smooth, bony antler underneath. Elk and deer migrate down from timberline as summer gives way to autumn. Buck deer and bull elk alike sense the significance of the season. Restless bulls become more aggressive as each gathers up a harem of cows. Olympic National Park has the largest herd of Roosevelt elk found anywhere. As many as 5,000 of these animals live within park boundaries. Darker in color and slightly larger than their Rocky Mountain relatives, Olympic elk can weigh 1,000 pounds or more. When they congregate in groups for the fall rut, the sights and sounds are unforgettable. Haunting, high-pitched bugling reflects the bull's emotional intensity. Displays of dominance underscore his desire to keep his harem of cows intact. Females are shadowed by the younger bulls, but normally mate only with the dominant male. The crisp fall air matches the tension that surges through the herd. When a challenger appears on a nearby ridge, the stage is set for battle. Bull elk expend an enormous amount of energy during the rut, taking little or no time to eat or rest. The dominant bull further depletes his strength by mating with every cow in his harem, making him particularly vulnerable. His chances of surviving a harsh winter are slim. But as long as there are elk calves in the spring, he will never really die. A new generation will take his place and ensure that majestic elk will forever roam the wilderness forests and high mountain meadows of Olympic National Park. There's no better place to see how weather molds our world than in Olympic, with its extremes of climate and life zones. Fallen trees decay almost visibly, and glaciers continue to carve the jagged mountains. It's also a great place to see how nature works, and there's no better way to feel a part of the environment than by taking an Olympic odyssey. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. Family life is the way of life for humans and for many wild animals. One of our favorite wild families are the dogs. The smallest members of the dog family are the famous foxes. There's virtually no place from Florida to Alaska, except for downtown city streets, where foxes of one kind or another cannot be found. Yet they're seldom seen. Alert, with cat-like paws and eyes, they're experts at survival and have been dodging man for centuries. Most common is the red fox, the subject of countless fables. It's often just as wily in real life as all the legends and stories portray it to be. North America's 4 other foxes, the Arctic, gray, swift, and kit, also have distinctive means of protection. Join me as we meet the family of foxes. When we hear the word fox, most of us think of the red fox, the most widely distributed member of its family. It can usually be distinguished by its handsome rust-colored coat and white-tipped tail. But red foxes also come in other colors, such as these silver foxes. The cross fox is the third color phase of the red fox. Another interesting member of the fox family is the Arctic fox, which ranges our northern polar regions. At the other extreme, the swift fox inhabits the dry plains of our western states. It's a small fox, well named for its speed. The smallest and perhaps rarest of all is the kit fox, which lives in our desert southwest. The gray fox, though nocturnal and seldom seen, is thought to be the most numerous of America's foxes. Except for parts of the Midwest and Northwest, the gray fox is found in most of the continental United States and south into Mexico. Its range overlaps that of the red fox, although the red is able to survive much farther north and inhabits even the coldest regions of Canada and Alaska. Although all foxes are omnivores, they are primarily carnivorous. They hunt at night and are especially active at dusk and dawn. Their activities include staking out territories by scent marking. It's their way of identifying themselves to receptive females, or vixens. It's also their way of challenging rival males. A male fox is called a dog fox. Although some males will mate with more than one female in a season, the vixen of choice is jealously protected from unmated intruders. Encounters between males are sometimes just screaming contests, but more often they are fierce battles and can even be fatal. As the rivals continue to threaten and posture, the female trots away. The battle ends in a standoff, with the resident male the apparent victor. He now chases the vixen and courts her with techniques very similar to those he just used on his rival. The same battle strategies and display postures learned in the first months of life are used both to fight off rivals and to win the attention of a mate. the rival slinks away, perhaps to find an unguarded vixen of his own. The range of the Arctic fox includes some of the coldest terrain in the world, much of it north of the Arctic Circle. These hardy little canids have even been sighted within 300 miles of the North Pole. Winter is the breeding season, as it is for all foxes. Also, as with most foxes, this Arctic dog fox and vixen have each spent the early months of the winter hunting alone. Courtship begins in February, and copulation takes place in March or early April, depending on latitude and weather conditions. Typically, it's accompanied by much vocalization, no matter how well bonded the pair may be. Female foxes remain in heat only briefly, sometimes for just one day. The more often she can be fertilized during this period, the better the chances for offspring. As winter comes to an end, their attention will turn toward preparing or renovating a den. Upper Minnesota marks the northern edge of the gray fox's range. Here, as in the Arctic, spring comes late, and there may still be snow on the ground when fox kits are born. The gestation period for most foxes is about 53 days. All young foxes are born blind, helpless, and thinly furred. The mother's body warmth is essential to their survival, and for the first week or so, she does not leave the den. Gray fox kits, typically 3 or 4 to a litter, weigh only about 4 ounces at birth, but they grow quickly. Spring finally arrives in Alaska, awakening the earth with warmth and sunshine. By this time it's June, and Arctic fox kits, already a month old, are just beginning to emerge from their den. Like most foxes, they're born with darker coats than they'll have as adults. At this age, they've begun to eat small game caught by their parents. This is also the age of play. But the play is serious, establishing dominance relationships that will mean the difference between life and death. Food is often scarce in the Arctic, and in a large litter, only the boldest kits will survive. Although larger animals such as caribou share territory with Arctic foxes, an adult fox has few enemies. Nevertheless, the mother fox stands wary guard over her young. The little ones are vulnerable to wolves, wolverines, polar bears, and even birds of prey such as owls. But their greatest enemy is starvation. Less than half will survive, but these the mother protects from the slightest hint of danger. No matter how threatened she may feel, she will not abandon the kits she has sent into hiding. She's very sensitive to intruders and very defensive. Finally, the caribou moves on to graze elsewhere and leaves the family in peace. All young foxes have but one brief summer to learn everything they must know to survive as adults. For the Arctic fox, this season is even shorter than it is for others. Farther south, in the Adirondack Mountains of New York, summer lasts longer, and growing up lessons can be paced more leisurely. The spreading roots of an oak tree make an ideal red fox den. While the mother goes off to hunt, the 2-month-old kits emerge to play. The alpine peaks of the Rocky Mountains provide a habitat very similar to that of the Arctic tundra. Due to altitude rather than latitude, summer in the high country of Colorado is almost as brief as it is in Alaska. In the colder parts of its range, color variations of the red fox occur with greater frequency than they do in the warmer south. But no matter what their color, members of this species always have a white-tipped tail. At 3 months old, these silver fox kits are almost full grown. Now called juveniles, they are fully weaned and have already learned the hunting techniques of their parents. Their main activity is still play, but they're now capable of using their superb senses of smell, sight, and hearing to find their own food. Siblings, like this brother and sister, often stay together and frolic for a while as they venture away from home. But they are nearing the end of a summer of childhood, and soon they will separate. In some instances, a female may remain behind with her parents for as long as another year, or she may leave if food in the area is scarce. But a male must always leave to establish a territory of his own. In the land of the desert bighorn, the sidewinder is a symbol of danger. But for this alert and agile kit fox, the poisonous reptile presents little or no threat. Like other foxes, the kit fox eats a variety of foods, including insects, fruit, mice, birds, and carrion. And like other foxes, for each type of creature it hunts, it has evolved a specialized hunting technique. The kit fox's large, bat-like ears can detect the rustling of a mouse up to 50 yards away. And a mouse is its favorite form of food. In fact, it can even survive without drinking any water if it eats enough small rodents. The small kit fox ranges our southwestern deserts. It has a very close cousin in the slightly larger swift fox. The swift fox roams the plains and prairies of our Midwest. Both foxes have suffered from loss of habitat and poisoning, though the swift fox seems to be recovering. Hunting birds, like these scaled quail, requires a different method than the listen, leap, and pounce technique used to hunt mice. Listening is important, but so is the element of surprise. The fox must stalk within close range before a successful chase can begin. Though some think that foxes kill too much game, the truth is they simply help keep it in balance. Foxes do far more to control rodents and other pests than they do to damage wildlife. For these clever creatures, autumn completes the cycle of the year. Foxes are some of our most intelligent and adaptable animals. They've learned to share the world with humans. And though maligned by some, foxes are experts in rodent control and overall beneficial. These graceful hunters remain abundant and are crafty enough to continue living up to their fabled reputation. The family of foxes. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. Many of us have a special place where we can relax and escape the pressures of everyday life. Maybe it's a favorite spot in the woods, or a quiet corner of a room, or even a secret place in our minds. If we're lucky, we can find a peaceful refuge. But what about wildlife? Our modern way of life has claimed much of the land that once meant peace and quiet
for our native animals. Where can these creatures go to find not only the space and solitude that man sometimes craves, but the very elements basic to their survival? The answer is our national wildlife refuges. America is fortunate in having the greatest wildlife refuge system in the world. From Florida to Alaska, millions of acres have been set aside for the primary benefit of wild birds and animals. Within these havens, hundreds of species thrive and interact as they have for countless generations. Many of these creatures could not exist today without a wild refuge.
Because Americans have gradually learned to treasure wildlife, creatures such as the Canada goose and the white-tailed deer are still a familiar part of our heritage. It could easily have happened otherwise. Earlier in our history, many species were destroyed forever by indifference and by greed. Egrets and other wading birds were severely overhunted for the commercial value of their elegant feathers. Unfortunately, these plumes were at their finest during the breeding season. For each parent bird killed, a whole brood of young egrets would starve to death. The egret population was decimated, all for a few feathers, all in the name of fashion. At the turn of the century, there were few organized citizens groups to protest such destruction. But fortunately, America then had a concerned and effective president who was also a naturalist. Among many foresighted acts was Teddy Roosevelt's establishment in 1903 of the country's first national wildlife refuge. Pelican Island in Florida was set aside to protect the nesting grounds of the brown pelican. Today, colonies of them once again thrive, and the original 3-acre Pelican Island is now part of a system which has grown to include more than 400 refuge areas in 49 states. These refuges protect thousands of species of animals and birds, including nearly 70 that are endangered. Alaska alone has at least 17 of these sanctuaries, including the largest, the 18-million-acre Arctic National Refuge. Preserving our irreplaceable natural heritage is an idea which has, like the acorn, slowly taken root in reality. We have come to understand the interdependency of all living things, and to see that the greatest threat now to any species is loss of habitat. Just as the acorns dropped from one oak tree can create an entire forest, so the refuge system shelters not only individual animals, but all of nature's magic and mystery. How does man benefit? Coastal refuges, such as Eastern Neck on Maryland's Chesapeake Bay, protect estuaries, vital to America's fishing industry. Inland, a great many refuges help to regenerate the nation's water supply and to control flooding. Above all, they offer a place for man to regenerate his own spirit by observing the natural world. Many refuges encompass several types of habitat. Eastern Neck, for example, supports not only waterfowl, but also one of the last remaining populations of the endangered Delmarva fox squirrel. This large, handsome native is often seen playing around refuge headquarters, which occupy what was once a private hunting lodge. Each of these sanctuaries is unique. Blackwater Refuge, for instance, is also located on Chesapeake Bay, only miles from Eastern Neck, yet it hosts distinctively different populations. Eagles, rare at Eastern Neck, are common at Blackwater. Blackwater also has a colony of Delmarva fox squirrel, plus two other endangered species, the red-cockaded woodpecker and the southern bald eagle. Magnificent flocks of ducks and geese are a thrilling sight at both refuges. Most refuges allow visitors, and sunrise or sunset is my favorite time to visit any refuge area. These are the best hours to gain a sense of nature's tranquility and to see the amazing variety of her timeless patterns. Often we forget just how much activity continues on into the night, or underground, unseen, but nonetheless essential. Bats may not be everyone's favorite, but think how heavily they figure in the control of insect pests. If species, such as these endangered Indiana brown bats, were to disappear, we would be far more dependent on chemical pesticides. There really are no insignificant species. Each one contributes to the survival of others, including man, many in ways that we are not even aware of. Refuges set aside for the protection of one type of bird or animal often support many others. This can readily be seen at 90,000-acre Aransas Refuge along the Texas coast, winter quarters of the magnificent whooping crane. Here, the spectacular courtship dance of America's tallest bird
takes place among white-tailed deer, herons, and white pelicans. Despite the threat of nearby oil wells, Aransas remains a fragile reminder of what paradise might be. Our refuge system includes nearly every conceivable type of climate and habitat, from rainforest to desert. A newly hatched brood of Harris hawks will make their first flight from a giant saguaro cactus that probably started growing around the time our Declaration of Independence was signed. Life in the desert is fragile and harsh, living things few and far between. Without refuges, it would be easy for the last member of an endangered species, like the desert tortoise, to disappear into oblivion without anyone taking notice. Desert refuges ensure that such creatures will have a chance to survive, as they have for millions of years, on their own specially evolved terms. Birds must contend for increasingly limited space and food, not only with members of their own species, but also with other birds and animals that have the same preference in diet and living quarters. The red-tailed hawk and the bald eagle are old enemies for this reason. Migratory birds, including this peregrine falcon, follow certain broadly defined routes called flyways in their travels north and south. Along these paths, refuge areas offer opportunities to find food, and they ensure safe destinations at both ends of the journey. No refuge guarantees any bird or animal protection from nature's inevitable ways. Rather, they provide a small measure of security, a last line of defense against the whims and fancies of man. At prairie refuges, such as Fort Niobrara in Nebraska, life goes on as it has since the dawn of history. Grazing, mining, lumbering, and even recreation on any large scale are seldom compatible with wildlife. Yet the federal government responsible for supporting the refuge system has, in recent years, encouraged an increase in activities which are hardly intended for the primary benefit of wildlife. Hunting is allowed on nearly half of our refuges. Many people consider this an unfair trick to play on wildlife in a sanctuary. Yet hunters and hunting contribute much of the support and revenue that makes wildlife management possible. It's a complex and sometimes controversial situation. There are other problems. On several refuges, native wildlife must compete with feral animals, such as ponies, horses, and burros. Yet these animals, too, are, in some ways,
part of our heritage. More difficult to defend is the occasional importation of non-native birds and animals, such as these African oodads, which put an added strain on limited refuge resources. Individual refuges face constant problems and conflicts, but the refuge system as a whole has done much to increase our understanding of wildlife. At Eastern Neck, for instance, records are kept which add greatly to our knowledge of the habits of migratory waterfowl. It's hoped that hunters and other observers will report sightings of the numbers on these goose collars. In this way, more accurate predictions can be made about how best to provide for their welfare. In the vast, rugged expanse of Alaska's wilderness, we can still see a measure of our own untamed past. For most of the country, wildness on such a grand scale is gone forever. But in Alaska is hope for the future. Here, massive unspoiled ecosystems have already been set aside, intact, to protect their original inhabitants. Alaskan brown bear, Dall sheep, moose, and the great herds of caribou are only a few of the magnificent creatures that fill this teeming land, with its thousands of miles of mountains, tundra, and shoreline. It would be incredibly sad if we allowed such incomparable grandeur to be trapped and hunted, manipulated and displaced until it could no longer be called truly wild. But the same pressures that constantly chip away our natural heritage in other parts of the country are at work here. The same Alaskan Conservation Act that in 1980 added 54 million acres of new lands to Alaska's refuge system also leaves each of those refuges wide open to oil and gas development. These beautiful animals are as much a part of America as the bison. Do we wish to see their ancient migration routes restricted, or their numbers reduced to a few isolated bands? The issues are complex, but the answer is clear. By providing food and shelter, you could create a mini refuge right in your own neighborhood or backyard. This will encourage wild visitors to remain in or to return to areas where otherwise they might never be seen again. Or you could encourage your community to set aside protected habitat, especially for birds and animals.
Keeping our national wildlife refuges in their original state is one of the best ways to provide for the lasting vitality of all of our native creatures. And these places provide us with a special opportunity to discover our own wild refuge. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America.
I'm Marty Stouffer. The oldest living thing was a sprout when the great pyramids were being built. The tallest living thing is the height of a skyscraper, and the largest living thing is as wide as an average house. All are evergreens, the most enduring of our trees. One of the major questions in nature is how to survive the winter. Trees have developed two distinct solutions: stay green the year round, like evergreens, or shed leaves and shut down, like deciduous trees. The leaves of deciduous trees turn the colors of fire in autumn and may steal the show until winter arrives. Long ago, people thought that evergreens were magical, so they brought them indoors to start the Christmas tree tradition. Evergreens have adapted to nearly every climate and geographic location. Let's investigate these magnificent trees with their branches that stay evergreen. The first trees to appear on our planet 300 million years ago were evergreens. The giant brontosaurus munched their needles. Many evergreens are of a broadleaf variety, such as these palm trees. In fact, most tropical trees like the mangrove are evergreen. The waxy coating on the leaves seals in moisture and keeps water loss to a minimum. The leaves hang downward to protect themselves and the fruit from the scorching rays of the sun.
Hey, let's go over here, Dad.
The king of trees is the giant sequoia. Today, it survives only in 60 widely scattered groves along the Sierra Nevadas in central California. A sequoia can grow 30 feet wide and 300 feet tall. Many are over 2,000 years old. This tree weighs over 3 million pounds. Its almost indestructible bark is 2 feet thick and resistant to fire. The giant sequoia is not quite the tallest, biggest, nor oldest tree in the world, but it is the largest tree in volume of timber. And it's a tree so sturdy that one actually had a road carved through it, though this didn't do the tree much good. The oldest known living things in the world are the bristlecone pines. One of the places they're found is here on the windy slopes of the White Mountains, also in California. This tortoise of the plant kingdom has been dated back as far as 4,600 years, about the same age as the Great Pyramids. Some of the older trees have just one strip of living bark left. But there is other life here. This is a female velvet ant. Actually, she's a wingless parasitic wasp. Her squeaking noise sounds a little like the creaking of these ancient trees. During each growing season, a tree adds a layer of wood, creating annual rings. In this cross-section, we see wide rings grown in wet years and narrow rings grown in dry years. During prolonged dry spells, bristlecones are able to shut down and add less than an inch of growth in 100 years. The rings also vary according to how much light and nutrition a tree receives. So they're used to help document the effects of pollution, earthquakes, and volcanic explosions by giving us information about past climates and the changing chemical contents of the atmosphere and soil. Over the centuries, these trees have been distorted by severe temperatures, blasting sand, and nearly constant wind. Hidden inside this twisted trunk is a cool drink of water for a pygmy nuthatch. Evergreens have adapted to more than just drought and heat. They can also survive the severe cold of winter. Here in Montana, the wind has turned these subalpine firs into snow ghosts. Their unique steeple shape normally helps to shed this heavy weight. But even with too much snow, their design allows the branches to bend without breaking. The shape also aids in the absorption of the sun's low winter rays. The needles can perform photosynthesis on a year-round basis. A waxy coating and resinous fill protects them against freezing temperatures. Because they contain very little sap, there's an insignificant amount of liquid in them to freeze. The small surface area of the needles slows down evaporation and conserves the tree's water supply. Cloud and fog moisture can condense on the needles, drain down, and supplement rainfall. The needles even filter nourishing mineral particles from the atmosphere. A wide variety of wildlife depends on evergreens. The trees offer shelter from the elements, as well as a year-round supply of food. The most familiar evergreen to us, and the most beneficial for animals, is the conifer, or cone-bearing evergreen. The tough, resinous needles are edible by a few hardy creatures, but most prefer the nutritious seeds found within the cones. The tallest of all the conifers and of all trees is the magnificent redwood. Crossbills are dependent on pine, spruce, and other conifers. As their name implies, they have a beak which is completely crossed. This special design works well for cracking the cone and extracting the seeds. Many birds and animals take on the name of the evergreen they rely on for food and shelter. The pine grosbeak prefers the young spring shoots, which are tender and juicy. The pine siskin is a little finch that lives in the evergreen forest. Its voice is usually the best clue to its identity. It's especially fond of pine seeds. The pine marten lives among the conifers in search of squirrels, rabbits, mice, and birds. It will jump from tree to tree and even pounce on its prey from above. Conifer seeds are also included in its diet. The spruce grouse is one of a few species which eat the mature needles. In fact, the needles of the spruce are a staple in this bird's diet. Whether they're named after the tree or not, many animals, like this black-tailed buck, eat lichen or moss off the bark of an evergreen tree. During a harsh winter, deer may be forced to eat the bark itself. And during every winter, the snowshoe hare survives on the needles of a variety of conifers. Evergreens produce an overabundance of needles, so they always have plenty to spare. But some creatures attack their life-sustaining bark with its underlying layer of juicy cambium. A single porcupine is capable of killing a substantial number of trees in a year. Luckily, porcupines only have one offspring a year, called a porcupet. Using large incisors, even this baby is able to gnaw into the inner bark and cause permanent damage to the tree. Porcupines became so prolific in Vermont's forests that the lumber companies imported from Maine the porcupine's only natural enemy, the fisher. Fishers are one of the few predators which regularly kills and eats porcupines. Today, with the predator-prey relationship restored, the fishers are thriving, and the porcupines are back in balance with the forest. During rutting season, the elk can also cause considerable damage to saplings. Before engaging rivals, it polishes its antlers. As a defense, evergreens produce a resin which aids in healing their wounds. It acts as a sealant against disease and insects. The sticky sap will sometimes trap small insects. Later, over the ages, buried under tons of pressure, this golden substance will become a hardened gem, known as amber. Plants are divided into two basic groups: angiosperms, which have an enclosed seed like an apple, and gymnosperms, like evergreens, which have naked seeds protected by a cone. As springtime turns to summer, the pollen sacs of the male cone dry out and release a cloud of pollen. Pollen of each species has its own specific design. So each type of tree can only be pollinated by its own kind. Utilizing the wind, the geometric cone, designed to function like a wind turbine, channels the pollen around itself to maximize pollination. To reduce self-pollination, male cones are usually numerous at the bottom of the tree, and female cones are predominantly at the top of the tree. The pollen sifts into the narrow spaces between the scales of a female cone. A scale has two ovules and requires a pollen grain in each to develop seeds. After pollination, the egg will eventually be fertilized, usually the following spring. It will then grow into a new organism called an embryo. Over the course of several years, the maturing female cone turns woody. Finally, the scales spread and drop the winged embryos, each carrying a single seed. It's surrounded by an aerodynamically designed source of food. This covering will nourish the seed through the winter. The following spring, the seed germinates and emerges from the ground. Fire is one of the forest's deadliest enemies, but is paradoxically a source of renewal and growth. Fire acts as nature's broom and sweeps away encroaching vegetation, which competes with trees for nutrients. The pulpy bark of evergreens will scorch, but not usually burn. To prevent damage to the cones, the needles burn at a relatively low temperature. After the fire has passed, the cones open to release their seeds. The jack, lodgepole, and knobcone pine have evolved this special survival technique. In the tall redwood forest, very little sunshine is allowed beneath the dense canopy. Although redwoods have cones and can reproduce by seed, they also have a unique regenerative ability which is rare in conifers. They often reproduce by developing shoots from the knobby burls that form along the base of the tree. A burl is a hard conglomerate of many dormant buds. These buds are not new lives like seedlings, but the same life, clones of the adult. When a tree is damaged, the clones quickly spring to life. They grow faster and have a better chance of survival than seedlings. Because water is abundant, the big conifers anchor with roots only 5 to 6 feet deep. Many are toppled over by the wind. The fallen giants soon become nurse logs, providing nutrients for new life that would not otherwise survive. This is Crater Lake in Oregon. The conifer found here is the whitebark pine. It has lost the ability to open its cones. So it relies on this intelligent member of the crow family, the Clark's nutcracker, to help with dispersing the seeds. The nutcracker puts the seeds into a pouch beneath its tongue until it can stash them. Because it hides more seeds than it can eat or even find again, many of the surplus seeds will eventually germinate. Man has always relied on the evergreen for fuel and housing. The conifers, in particular, have such great commercial value that they represent 75% of the timber cut today. They're used as the major element in construction and housing, and in products, from plywood to pencils. They also become pulp for paper, cellulose for cellophane, and rayon for clothing. Because of their value to the lumber industry, evergreens are grown in scientifically managed forests. But this does not always ensure a profitable harvest. The growth of many trees may already have been stunted by acid rain. But because conifer growth is slow and subject to so many influences, evaluating the impact of acid rain will take a long time. What we do know is that conifers are quite susceptible to airborne pollution, since their needles pull moisture out of toxic-laden clouds. In this shadowy world, a refuge exists for an incredible variety of plant and animal life. We realize that our forests are valuable for timber, but it's also important for us to realize just how valuable they are as sanctuaries for wildlife and as living classrooms for us. It took millions of years for this complex ecosystem to develop. This silent world, sheltered by a canopy of green, is home for many creatures which can live nowhere else. From Florida palms to California redwoods, evergreens are symbols of survival. They have endured eons of winters, often thriving in soils too poor for other trees. Growing right up to timberline and north to tree line, they are the wilderness. Their graceful beauty enriches our lives, and their hidden rings illuminate our past. In return, we must ensure that the future continues bright for the evergreen. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. Charting ancient pathways in the sky, some of nature's most colorful and charismatic birds flock to our marshlands year after year. Here in this wet world of cattails and marsh grass, millions of ducks and geese live out their lives. In springtime, as males battle for mates and the chance to breed, the females settle into nesting and rearing their young. Predators, too, haunt these rich wetlands, preying on young, sick, and careless birds. Only the smartest and strongest will survive. Witness the inspiring spectacle of our ducks and geese as we take flight with wings over the marsh. Ducks and geese are among nature's most beautiful creatures. In flight, streamlined and elegant, they are poetry in motion. All waterfowl are very strong flyers, migrating extraordinary distances and famous for their amazing navigational skills. When waterfowl migrate south in autumn and north in spring, they follow ancient corridors in the sky called flyways. In North America, there are 4 main flight paths: the Pacific, the Central, the Mississippi Valley, and the Eastern. A dazzling array of duck species use these flyways, each with its own unique shape, size, and lifestyle. In waterfowl, the males, like this drake canvasback, are usually the most colorful. Different duck species have different feeding behaviors. Some feed near the surface, others deep underwater. Deep water feeders, called divers, feed on water plants and invertebrates in the mud below. Shallow water feeders, known as dabblers, sift and siphon. They strain out small plants and animals. Diving duck drakes typically have red or black heads and bright yellow eyes, like this ringneck duck. To propel themselves better underwater, the legs of divers are attached far back on their bodies. Because of this, divers must run to get airborne. Dabblers, like this pintail, generally forage on the surface, but a unique behavior called tipping allows them to also feed underwater. Note the location of the legs. All dabblers, like these cinnamon teal, have stout legs positioned more to the center of their bodies. This allows them to jump straight up and take off. Let's travel along and witness one of nature's great spectacles. Summer is coming to an end. Soon it will be time once again for the flocks to gather. There's a chill in the air as a north wind pushes them southward. Ducks, geese, and swans, more than 50 species in all, are on the move. Like wolves, which follow herds of caribou, eagles follow the migrating flocks. This behavior is passed on from generation to generation as young eagles join the adults on their first migration. As the grand passage begins each autumn, waterfowl by the thousands gather at staging wetlands. Here they are hunted by the hungry bald eagles. By pushing the flock, an eagle forces one unfortunate mallard to make a fatal mistake. The other ducks soon settle down. Catching the duck is only half the battle. Keeping it is the other. Eagles are opportunistic and will steal from each other rather than go out and catch their own prey. They do not hunt in cooperative packs like wolves. This young hunter manages to hold on to its prize. Despite constant pressure from eagles and other predators, these stopping points are essential. The birds will stay until ice covers all the open water. The great flocks which fill the winter skies have long fascinated humans. Some are drawn by an innate instinct to hunt. In communities all across America, waterfowl hunting is a time-honored tradition. Billions of dollars are spent each year by millions of hunters. They've funded countless conservation projects which have saved many marshes from being drained and developed. Ironically, hunters are waterfowl's best friend. Most hunters exhibit no less skill than the bald eagle in pursuit of this quarry. Hunting seasons and harvest limits ensure that a balance is maintained in our wetlands. The red fox is another frequent hunter in the marsh. It usually goes after small rodents, but if the right opportunity presents itself, the fox will eat anything it can catch. A wounded or sick duck would do quite nicely, or a perfectly healthy duck, for that matter. The fox waits for the birds to come closer. But the ducks seem to have the upper hand, or do they? The wet fox does not look too happy. But the ducks seem perfectly pleased with the outcome. We who quack and swim away will live to quack another day. The courtship displays of newly returned migrating flocks marks the beginning of spring and mating season. Drakes display in hopes of attracting a hen, and each species has its own unique style of displaying. The spunky little ruddy duck drake has one of the oddest. His display is sort of a burping hiccup. It's meant to attract a mate and establish a territory. But it also attracts rival males, hoping to stake their claim. The female plays an active role in driving off unwanted males. Skirmishes often escalate. The prevailing pair proudly claims the turf. The intruder gives one final call and retreats to a different part of the pond. Mallards court during migration, and by early spring, most pairs are already established. Males which do not find a mate will begin the eclipse molt. During this time, bachelor males take on the drab plumage of the female. Drakes which were successful in finding a mate, like this one, will remain in full nuptial plumage until nesting begins. Most ducks molt twice a year, once in spring and again in autumn. Mating for mallards is not simply an act of procreation. In fact, it's part of the ritualized pair bonding. A drake pintail keeps his distance. This up-down, head-nodding gesture is a mutual agreement of sorts. It signifies the pair's commitment to mate. When a sufficient amount of head bobbing has taken place and the female is ready, she will allow the drake to mount. After copulation, the drake does a victory swim, while the hen performs a ceremonial bath. This female redhead has already been on her nest for several weeks. While turning the eggs, she hears the faint peeps of her little ducklings inside. Her calls back to them are thought to help synchronize the hatch. During a month or so of incubation, the hen was able to keep her nest a secret. Now that the young have hatched, they could draw unwanted attention. Once they've dried off, mother will lead them to the safety of the water. Unlike other birds, ducks use the nest only for incubation. A mink would love to lunch on ducklings. In the water, there are fewer dangers, and the ducklings can now begin to forage. An inexperienced mallard hen has laid her eggs in an unprotected, exposed area. Mink specialize in a semi-aquatic lifestyle and live in close proximity to ducks. All ducks must learn to hide their nests from the mink which hunt the water's edge. Defenseless against the hungry mink, the hen is forced to abandon her clutch and watch from a safe distance as her precious eggs are eaten. Still, the hen will live to mate again and will soon lay a second clutch of eggs, hopefully in a better location. Unlike most birds, ducklings hatch with their eyes open, covered in downy feathers, and almost completely independent. A mother duck does little to care for her brood after they've hatched. A yellow-headed blackbird, however, will spend her entire day, day after day, hunting insects to feed her young. Another new brood heads for the water. This wacky straggler has an eggshell helmet. Won't be needing that. A nearby family of eared grebes hitches a ride on father grebe. Because ducklings are so self-sufficient, ducks are able to raise more young than other species of birds. Baby ducks may instinctively know how to fend for themselves. Yet they still remain close to mother as she watches for predators and guides them to the best feeding areas. They peck away at every little thing that intrigues them. Freshwater invertebrates make up the majority of their diet. On this high-protein diet, young ducks grow quickly, as they must. They have only a few months in which to prepare for migration, a true test of strength and survival. Once again, the autumn sky is filled with the living poetry of a million beating wings. Snow geese are some of the first to move south. Winter comes early in the Arctic where they nest. By late August, snow flurries begin to push them out. By October, they arrive at mid-latitude staging wetlands. Here, thousands of birds stop to rest and feed. These staging marshes are of crucial importance. a last chance gas station with 800 miles more to go. Many marshes along the ancient flyways have been drained and are now useless to the flocks. This has caused overcrowding in some of the remaining wetlands. Yet, the journey continues. With the arrival of winter, most of the flocks move farther south, but many ducks are reluctant to leave and will stay as long as there is open water. But these ducks risk facing predators which lie in wait in the hope of capturing inexperienced young birds on their long and tiresome journey, predators such as the goshawk. The mallards still have water on their side, and though this strategy did not work with the eagles, the goshawk cannot risk getting waterlogged in the dead of winter. For this lucky duck, diving under worked. But the goshawk is a stealthy and persistent hunter. Unlike the eagle, it is able to outfly a mallard and snatch a fleeing duck right out of the air. The laws of nature work to benefit all species in the wild. The duck that is captured is inferior in some small way, and now these inferior genes will not be passed on to the future. And the duck which escaped will also pass on its successful traits. In this way, the cycle of life continues. Freshwater wetlands, drained for development and agriculture, are the most endangered North American habitat. With fewer places to forage and raise their young, ducks and geese become more vulnerable to disease and starvation. Let's leave a home for waterfowl, so that in years to come we may always experience the glorious spectacle of wings over the marsh. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America.
I'm Marty Stouffer. There are more than 22,000 different kinds of fishes in the world. That's more species than all the mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians combined. And among all those different kinds of fish, none is more sought after by fishermen than the largemouth bass, the most popular game fish in America. Its very name brings a kind of frenzied excitement to millions of anglers. Each year, they spend an increasing amount of dollars on everything from bait to bass boats. Anything to help them hook into a big mouth. This legendary fighting fish has become big business. Join me as I explore the world of the billion-dollar bass. The slow-moving currents of Florida's lakes and rivers provide warm, oxygen-rich water, sunny spawning areas, protection from northwest winds, and deep water sanctuaries. Just the right conditions for bass to flourish. Long before human anglers plied these placid waters, a host of creatures reaped a bountiful harvest of bass and other warm water fishes. Cormorants, brown pelicans, and osprey are common here on Florida's west coast. What they seek lies just below the surface. These plankton-filled waters are home to the largemouth bass, the largest member of the genus of black bass. All bass belong to the sunfish family, which includes bluegills, known as brim in the South. But bass are more streamlined and powerful than the oval-shaped brim. Possessing a sprinter's speed, bass can swim up to 20 miles per hour for short distances. Though largely ocean-going, jack crevalles visit these brackish waters, traveling in large hunting schools. Occasionally, a manatee glides silently by. Strange as it seems, this gentle aquatic mammal is a distant relative of the elephant. Schools of mullet are common in the nearby Gulf, and here, where fresh water from springs and rivers mixes with the ocean. The largemouth bass, or bigmouth as it's sometimes called, is less active than the flashy mullet, and it does not possess the endurance of a trout, which must battle fast currents. Instead, the bass prefers a more sedentary life in slow-moving water. Its diverse habitats also include small farm ponds, quarries, lakes, and reservoirs. Originally, largemouth bass were found only in the eastern half of the United States. Today, they've been successfully introduced into every state except Alaska. Running just above the bass's black lateral marking is a thin line of nerve-sensitive scales to help this hardy predator detect low-frequency vibrations of its prey.
Its drab appearance gives it a distinct advantage when stalking. The largemouth literally inhales its quarry like a powerful pump. A 10-pound bass can suck in a quart of water in one gulp. Its color varies from light to dark green, and its chameleon-like ability to change colors and even develop spots to match the shadows of shallow water enhance its reputation as a stealthy hunter of fish, insects, crayfish, even birds and rodents. Every year, millions of fishermen come looking for a Florida lunker, shop talk, for a trophy bass. But over the years, catching trophy bass has become more difficult, largely due to overfishing and loss of habitat. Photos from the 1890s are vivid reminders of the excesses of the past. Previous generations had a catch-and-kill philosophy, which depleted many areas of nearly all their bass. Even without the legendary giant fish of yesteryear, bass fishing has become big business. Among the many sport fishermen are the less conventional bow hunters, trying to skewer a gar or perhaps a shad. An osprey snags a very small gar. Nicknamed fishhawk because it dines almost exclusively on fish, the osprey is the only raptor with talons and rough feet uniquely adapted to clasp and carry a slippery snack. What looked easy for the osprey sometimes seems almost comically awkward for humans. Regardless, people are captivated by bass fishing. Their expenditure of time is invariably accompanied by a staggering investment of money. Millions of serious bass fishermen have a boat, and not just any boat, but a bass boat. A well-equipped boat may carry a dozen or so rods made of boron, graphite, fiberon, or glassite. And reel selection can be critical. Casting, closed-faced, spinning, and on and on. An additional trolling motor helps sneak up on that elusive big mouth. A live well is a regular fixture on a decked-out bass boat.
Well, I believe that's all the shiners we've got. Now we'll have to start going artificials.
Okay.
Bass fishermen, even the most modestly outfitted, have a high-rise tackle box full of weird-looking lures with names like Snagless Sally, Mr. Twister Frog, Devil's Toothpick, Crazy Crawler, Wigglewort, and Chug Bug. Bass fanatics have depth finders, water temperature meters, and fish locators to chart the structure of the bottom and pinpoint the location of fish. Specialty stores sell endless assortments of bass paraphernalia, and not just in Florida. The Bass Pro Shop in Springfield, Missouri has turned bass into bucks. Advertised as a sportsman's mall, it speaks to the billion-dollar bass fishing industry more clearly than any statistics. Streets are even named for bass, and no less than 4 towns in Florida claim to be the bass capital of the world. All this hoopla over a fish, but to millions of anglers, the chance to catch a largemouth is worth any price.
There's that for you. Don't let him beat you.
Some experts link fishing success to a full moon, a time when bass in their reproductive cycle are highly vulnerable. It's springtime in central Florida, and water temperatures are warming into the 60s. Bass activity is on the rise. The typically larger, egg-swollen female is courted by a smaller male. He tries to persuade her to lay her eggs in the nest site he has cleared of debris. The site is located in a sunny spot on the shallow river bottom, 30 feet from other bass nests. Only now, during spawning, can male and female bass be told apart. The female's eyes glow dark, while the male's eyes have faded to a pale gold. The female will deposit some 20 to 50,000 eggs in the male's chosen spot. After the male fertilizes the eggs, they incubate for 2 to 7 days, depending on the temperature of the water. Both parents aggressively defend the jewel-like clusters. Contrary to popular belief, the female has a vital role in protecting the eggs. An unwary fish that comes to rest near the male bass is quickly dispatched. "3 days later, the young start to emerge. tiny baby bass with yolk sacs attached to their bellies begin to vibrate, flexing their undeveloped fins and tails. Within a few days, these little micro bass break free of their thin membrane. Bottom heavy from their yolk sacs, they swim upright. The mother bass retreats to deeper water to rest and recuperate from the stress of spawning. Full recovery may take up to 3 weeks. Thousands of baby bass, known as fry, school up, feeding on tiny crustaceans and microscopic zooplanktons. The father now functions as a single parent, guarding the fry and attacking any threat to his offspring. It's no coincidence that most bass fishing takes place while bass are spawning. Every year in growing numbers, thousands of fishermen put their skills on the line for a chance to take home cash prizes. A leisure sport has become a series of highly competitive angling events, which one writer calls bass wars.
Basil bacon. Basil bacon. Now y'all do back. 350. Thank you.
Tournament promoters compare their multi-day events to golf's pro-am circuit. Both amateurs and professional anglers vie for prizes in their respective categories.
Boat 41, J.D. Prince. J.D. Prince, you're behind Robert Kilby. Pull on up as quickly as you can.
According to some tournament veterans, there's more to winning a bass event than just choosing the right lure or cultivating the most skillful casting techniques. Most important is the selection of sites where bass are biting. The best fishing spots may be miles apart. Like public fishermen, tournament fishermen gravitate to the spawning beds where male bass are guarding their nests from predators. In addition to the motivation of hunger, males are so defensive at this time that they may interpret a dangling lure as an attack on their nest and strike at it. The increase in fishing activity over the spawning bed attracts a school of brim looking for a meal. Drawn to the dancing rubber lure, the brim target the nest. The combined pressure of human and sunfish predators drives the male away. All the eggs are eaten by the brim. Controversy has clouded bass tournaments for years. Tournament rules prohibit the use of live bait and require aerated live wells on all boats, but ignore the potential damage to sensitive spawning beds. Regulations also restrict fishermen to a limit of 5 to 7 fish, and these must meet size requirements, usually a 14-inch minimum. There is a 2-ounce weight deduction for submitting a dead one during the weigh-in process, and also a sizable penalty for keeping an undersized fish. After each day of fishing, anglers pass through checkpoints where their catch is counted and measured. During the process, the bass are kept in plastic bags that are held in tanks of treated and cooled water. Finally, the largemouth are carried to the scales for weighing.
And the weight, this will put him in the lead in the big weight, folks. He'll probably win the tournament. 14 pounds, 9 ounces, the Guido Hipdad. You know, that's an incredible fish. Holy, he's got 2 of the larger ones up. These are all spectacular bass, folks. And he had 2 bass at noon today, so we know he's been a busy boy. Guido Hipdad, a fabulous catch. Here's just 2 of the specimens, folks, that he's caught during the course of the day. All right, if we could, now I want to ask you this. You know, you're early. This is early in the first flight. So we'll weigh this fast. This is about to go about 3.5 pounds. The weight. Just to be sure, this is the largest so far.
Even though nearly all fish are returned to the water alive, what of the policy of fishing bass beds? How sporting is it for tournament anglers or any fisherman to catch a parent that's trying to guard its young? Is there really any difference between leaving baby bass undefended and hunting for does, which are nurturing fawns? And ultimately, how damaging is this activity to future populations? All across the country, the blooming of dogwood usually coincides with the spawning of bass. The male bass continues guarding his fry for several weeks, until they're about an inch long. Once on their own, the fry are extremely vulnerable. Hiding in weed beds and schooling up will prove to be only moderately successful. Baby bass occupy a niche near the bottom of the food chain. They are pursued by a variety of skillful hunters, like the anhinga. Double-crested cormorants also prey on all sorts of small to medium-sized fish, including the tiny offspring of the largemouth bass. From the thousands of eggs laid by each female, few live through their first summer. On average, less than 10 baby bass from any given nest will reach 10 inches. Sometimes only 1 in 1 million survive. From the tiniest fry to the largest adult, the life of a bass is a never-ending struggle for survival. The recent bass fishing phenomenon has put even more pressure on largemouth populations. Fortunately, it has also spawned a whole new generation of fishermen with a catch and release philosophy. Conscientious anglers who understand that bass are a precious resource to be protected. Ironically, even catch and release is not without risk, for the fish that fights most heroically for freedom may die when released. Robbed of too much oxygen, the two-chambered heart may give out after a particularly long fight. Even under a cloud of such intense popularity, the bass as a species shows few signs of giving in. Bass fishing has become a billion-dollar business. All the hype makes it easy to forget that the bass is more than a trophy for a living room wall. It's an intelligent predator, responsible parent, and a fascinating member of our environment. By protecting bass habitat from development and participating in a catch and release philosophy, we can work together to ensure a future for the billion-dollar bass. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. It may seem strange to speak of fishes as wildlife, since they inhabit a watery world so different from our own. Mysterious and elusive, their ability to breathe underwater has mystified men for centuries. But when you think about it, it's water that makes Earth a livable home for all of us, from the immense Great Lakes to the tiniest backyard streams. America's inland waters support more than 700 species of fishes. You'd be amazed at how many are found right in your area, surviving by means that took us long to evolve as the waters they live in. Some are the familiar fish that many people enjoy catching and eating. Others are anything but ordinary. Huge, primitive monsters, or brilliant miniature rainbows, and a few so unusual, it's hard to tell just what world they belong to. But whether we find them tasty or incredible, they're all fascinating fishes. For most of us, the underwater world is as mysterious as another planet. Many of its inhabitants seem alien as well. But water covers 2/3 of the Earth's surface, and it is here that fish, the ancestors of all vertebrates, began evolving more than 400 million years ago. Some have changed little since then, while others have developed amazingly complex ways of life. Many fish are hunters, and most are hunted, not only by man, but by a wide variety of birds, mammals, reptiles, and other fishes. In the smallest pond or the largest lake, the shallowest brook or the most powerful river, each type of fish has a unique and useful place. Some fish feed along the bottom, others at the surface, and still others in between. Some, like these shiners and white bass, travel in schools with hundreds of their own kind. Some intermingle with other species. And some, like these striped bass, are most often solitary. A few fish don't look much like fish at all. The lamprey eel is the most primitive living vertebrate, and one of the most unusual, with its circular mouth, rasping tongue, and rows of sharp teeth. A parasitic lamprey lives by fastening itself to another fish, making a wound with its tongue, and sucking the vital fluids from its host. The lamprey lacks scales and true gills, and its skeleton is made of cartilage rather than bone, but nevertheless, it is a fish, just as much as its more ordinary host. The sturgeon, another primitive fish, is North America's largest freshwater species. Record specimens have weighed over 1,800 pounds and measured more than 14 feet in length. Unlike birds and mammals, fishes continue to grow as long as they live. A very large sturgeon may have been quietly scavenging along a lake or river bottom for almost a century. The bowfin, with its full-length dorsal fin, is another living fossil. It has two breathing systems, gills for breathing underwater, and a swim bladder, which it fills by gulping air at the surface. Large and slow-moving, the gar waits near the surface for whatever the current might bring. This long-nosed gar is one of 4 archaic species common in the southeast. All of them, the spotted gar, the short-nosed gar, and the huge alligator gar, breathe through gills when active and use their swim bladders while basking near the surface of warm, oxygen-depleted waters. Like most other primitive fish, the gar is covered with an armor of tough, hard scales which do not overlap. North America's most ancient large animal is the paddlefish. 50 million years before the first dinosaur appeared on Earth, this fish was already cruising with its enormous mouth wide open, straining plankton from the warm waters of inland seas. As those seas dried up, paddlefish adapted well to the great rivers that were gradually left behind, especially to our Missouri and Mississippi river basins. Because of its large size, over 6 feet long in some cases, and its formidable appearance, this mild-mannered fish thrived for eons in a natural balance that included few enemies. Then, along came civilization. Suddenly, the fate of these ancient creatures has become uncertain. In the late 1900s, paddlefish roe were valued as caviar, though their meat was then considered worthless. But by the turn of the century, unregulated commercial fishing had drastically reduced their numbers. Today, snagging paddlefish during their spawning season continues as a popular sport, especially around Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, where much of the remaining paddlefish population is concentrated.
Look at this one in the boat.
I got it. Boy, that's a big one.
A snagging season is permitted because, as bureaucratic logic would have it, the fish are effectively sterile.
That's a big one, all right.
The only reason that they cannot reproduce is simply that they now have no place to do so. Not until 1960 did anyone discover the specialized conditions, spring floodwaters flowing over clean gravel beds, that paddlefish need for spawning. By then, it was too late. The Army Corps of Engineers had already dredged and straightened, channeled and controlled most of the rivers where paddlefish once had bred. In 1977, waters backed up by the controversial Truman Dam silted over one of the last remaining paddlefish spawning grounds. But the Missouri Department of Conservation was not willing to let the paddlefish disappear forever. After much experimentation, a way was found to induce artificial spawning. In the spring, a few dozen gravid females and mature males are carefully netted and held in hatchery ponds. When it's judged that her eggs are ripe, a female is injected with hormones taken from the pituitary glands of snagged paddlefish. This injection causes the female to release her eggs, little by little, over a period of about 24 hours, much as she would in the wild. At each stage, milk taken from the males is added to the eggs, and the solution is gently mixed with a feather to maximize chances of fertilization without damage to the eggs. The fertilized eggs are carefully tumbled to simulate natural water conditions and to keep the highly adhesive eggs from sticking together. Can the same kind of engineering that doomed this ancient fish now save it? Can an animal that has survived the age of coal, the age of reptiles, and several ice ages also survive the age of technology? That our ingenuity and goodwill might help it to continue are a credit to our intelligence and our sense of responsibility. But that such artificial procedures are now the only means by which this amazing animal can survive is, to me, unspeakably sad. In fast-moving currents, most fish, like these minnows, are able to rise and sink at will by using their swim bladders, as well as their fins. The lack of an inflatable bladder restricts these darters to the bottom of streams where they live. The darters are another group of fishes whose habitat is restricted by special requirements. Lacking an inflatable swim bladder with which other fish are able to rise and sink at will, these tiny members of the perch family are confined to stream bottoms. Their name comes from the way they dart about after food or away from enemies. Throughout most of the year, both males and females are quite plain-looking. During the spring spawning season, however, the males of several species turn into some of the most vividly colored freshwater fish in the world. The females remain rather drab. As with many animals and birds and other fish, it is the male that gets the ornamentation. Biologists are just beginning to understand the vital role of these miniature rainbows in the ecology of healthy streams. Of the more than 125 North American species, most inhabit very regional streams in the eastern part of the country, from Florida and Louisiana, north to Pennsylvania, Ohio, and even Wisconsin. The tiniest fish in North America is called the least killifish, though it does not belong to the killifish family. Oddly enough, it's among those fishes that bear their young alive. It is closely related to the mosquito fish, another tiny live bearer with a reputation for consuming large numbers of mosquito larvae. Out west, in the Colorado River drainage, another live bearer, the Gila top minnow. Live bearers produce far fewer young than do fish that lay thousands or even millions of eggs. A packet of sperm implanted by the male is kept inside the female and used to fertilize several broods over a period of months. The young emerge able to fend for themselves, but the odds are still stacked against survival. Many are eaten by their own relatives. But the reason they are threatened as a species is because of habitat destruction and introduced competitors which prey on their young. The Gila top minnow was once one of the most common fish. Now, it's on the endangered list. Hopefully, some of these little ones will live to make their own contribution to the ecology of the few scattered springs where they're still found. One of nature's great mysteries is how salmon find their way thousands of miles from ocean feeding grounds to spawn in the same ancestral streams where their life began. As they battle their way upstream in this Washington State River, Pacific salmon begin to form mating pairs. The female uses her tail to sweep clean a nesting site, or redd. The male stays close by her side as she deposits her eggs. As many as 7,000 of them. Immediately, the male shudders as he releases the milt that will fertilize a new generation. The female will continue to guard her nest. But despite her vigilance, only about 2 of those thousands of eggs will survive to maturity. For the Pacific salmon, male and female alike, there is only one journey up the river of life. After spawning, they all die. Here in Maine, Atlantic salmon are another of nature's mysteries. Unlike their Pacific cousins, they often do live to spawn again. But their migrations are not easy either. As they leave salt water to go upstream, they give up eating entirely. As their sexual organs develop, they must subsist on stored fat deposits until they return to the sea, sometimes as much as a year later. Man is not the only creature that alters the aquatic environment. Beaver dams create ponds which are home to certain fish that could not hold their own in faster flowing waters. Here in northern Wisconsin, predatory species such as these smallmouth bass and walleye fare equally well in either lakes or streams. This thinner fish, which looks like a walleye, is actually a sauger, a close relative. The walleye is so called because of the frosted look of its eyes. These fish and many others find an extra measure of food and protection in the shadow of the beaver's dam. Some scavengers and bottom feeders, like the brown bullhead, prefer still or slow-moving water where their food can settle. It's funny that we associate most catfish with muddy southern rivers, yet the brown bullhead, like many other fish, cannot tolerate silty or polluted water. This common member of the catfish family is found all over the country east of the Mississippi, from Florida to Canada, and has been introduced into other areas as well. The bullhead feeds mostly at night, feeling around for its prey with its sensitive chin whiskers, or barbels. Totally omnivorous, it consumes dead matter, plants, insect larvae, mollusks, even small fish. And of course, as every child with a cane fishing pole knows, worms. The burbot, the only freshwater member of the cod family, must be among the strangest looking of North American fishes. It lives in the deep, cold waters from the Great Lakes northward to the Arctic. A voracious predator, the muskie is another cold water species. It sometimes finds itself in competition with the bluegill, the most common of the sunfishes. by melting Rocky Mountain snow, the Colorado River drops more than 2 miles in its steep journey to the sea. Through its canyons run some of the most turbulent waters on Earth. Several fish have evolved remarkable adaptations for surviving in these swirling sediments. The beautifully streamlined squawfish is one of the most successful. It's the world's largest minnow, weighing up to 80 pounds, which goes to show that not all minnows are small. Another is the bony-tailed chub, also superbly designed. Its torpedo-shaped body and humped shoulder help it fight the churning flow. Though its 15 inches are small, compared with the 3 to 5 feet for the squawfish, it too is large for a minnow. An unusual mouth and an even more pronounced hump characterize the razorback sucker. Its high, sharp dorsal ridge keeps it oriented in swift currents while it scours the bottom for food. At the Dexter National Fish Hatchery in New Mexico, efforts are underway to save these fish, much in the same way that the paddlefish is being preserved. The Colorado River and its tributaries have been dammed, diverted, and stocked with non-native competitors. Its original inhabitants, these unusual fast-water fishes, are now endangered. But preservation under artificial conditions is not enough. Without clean, free-running waters, all wild fishes are doomed to be little more than zoo specimens. Their fate, quite literally, is in our hands.
Fishes definitely qualify as wildlife. They normally thrive without human help, and they fight when caught. Like other creatures, they're also a real challenge to study in the wild. Fortunately, many of America's cities have a public aquarium where you can see, up close, what makes a fish a fish. Some of my favorites are in Chicago, Dallas, San Francisco, and the National Aquarium in Baltimore. There are others, and you should pay a visit to the one in your area. But these fish zoos must not become their only havens. Preserving the health of our free-flowing waters will ensure that they can continue living their submerged lives as fascinating fishes. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America.